to the discussion on engaging your community with exhibits and displays. I'm so glad we have a good group today. I'm excited to hear what you're thinking, what you've thought about on these topics. I'll introduce myself and then we'll introduce everyone. Just a second, my cord fell down. I'm the facilitator today. My name is Kristen Schuler. I'm from James Madison University. I'm the Director of Outreach and Partnerships here at JMU for the libraries, not for the whole university. We focus on student outreach, current and prospective JMU students, and we do a lot of displays and exhibits in my small department. Again, I'll be your facilitator. We have a backup facilitator as well, and she can introduce herself. And before we get started with the discussion, one quick note, and with introductions, one quick note, if you would mute your microphone when you're not talking or not planning to talk, that makes it easier for everyone to hear. That's, if you're on a computer that looks like mine, it's at the top, you have to hover over your, up here, and you'll see a microphone mute option be visible. And again, we have Melissa on chat, so she'll chime in over there and I'll verbalize some or all of her comments for the recording. I'll try, at least, Melissa. So without further ado, let's have you all introduce yourself. Just name, position, and where you work, and anything else you want to share before we get started. Can we start with Kristen, our backup facilitator?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Kristen Mastel. I'm at the University of Minnesota on the St. Paul campus. And I do outreach and instruction. And I'm the backup person. Looks like we probably aren't streaming live. That was my oops in setting up the account. But that's okay. We're recording and we'll switch it over afterwards. But no big deal. So I'll be taking notes. I'll do the best that I can. And then afterwards, it'll all get condensed and shared out. And I apologize. I'll chime in if something strikes my fancy. But I'll just introduce, there's Jigsy, my therapy dog, who's going to be doing therapy work with our students later today. So he's with me. If you hear a bark by occasion, if I'm unmuted, that's why.
That's wonderful. Hi, Jigsy.
Kristen, I lost you.
Yeah, how about Dennis? Do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Dennis Davies Wilson. I am the library director at the University of New Mexico Los Alamos branch campus, and I do everything. Student outreach, information literacy, instruction, collection development, the whole gamut.
Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you.
I'll read Melissa's. She says, Melissa Rucker, Catalog Librarian, University of the Incarnate Word. Welcome, Melissa. How about, I'm just going left to right on my screen. How about Derek?
Okay. Hi, I'm Derek Webb. I'm the Special Collections Librarian and University Archivist at Mississippi University for Women. So I am a loan arranger. I do all the things. We have a number of exhibit cases and such that we work with. So that's it.
Hi, Derek. LaMonica, would you go next?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is LaMonica Sanford, and I am the assessment librarian at Georgia College. And I wanted to come to this particular session because we're trying to increase awareness of our different collections, but especially, I guess, our young adult in our juvenile collection, which is heavily used by, I guess, people in the education field.
Great. Thanks. Megan, you're next on my screen.
Am I unmuted now?
Now you're unmuted, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. I'm sorry I can't get my camera working either. But my name is Megan, and I'm the Specialist Librarian of Classics, Philosophy, and Religion at the University of Florida. And I'm a new librarian. I've been here less than 2 years, but I came from a bit of a museum studies background as well as classics. So I'm just really excited about exhibits. I've done 2, and I'm planning a 3rd one now.
Great, thanks. Welcome. And I guess, Melissa, would you care to go? Melissa, sorry, I see you on the screen, but yes, I've already read your introduction. Sorry, Melissa, I'm still getting used to what's on the screen. All right, so I'm not going to call on you the rest of the time for the discussion. You can chime in, unmute, and jump in whenever you want. We have about 9 questions. We'll try to get through all of them in about the next hour. We added 2 questions since the email went out. One is about accessibility, so how do you think about accessibility for exhibits and displays? And one's about policies or guidelines or standards. You can jump in and take the discussion in a slightly different direction or add a comment or question at any time. But I'll just start with the questions as they came out in the email, and we can kind of see how it goes, take it in our own directions. So first, I just wanted to hear what are the types of goals you set for your exhibits or displays, and why are those your goals? And anyone can begin.
I'll go. This is Dennis. Our goals are to inform, educate, and highlight collection resources.
Those are similar to our goals at JMU. We try to align when we can with the strategic goals of the library or the directions and the university, or with courses if we're working with professors, faculty. But we don't always align with the course.
Yeah, we try to align with courses, and I'll talk a little bit later about some of the student curated exhibits we've done. Try to align with events that are that the campus is doing or that are important to the community, that kind of thing.
I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Other goals that folks have for their libraries, displays, and exhibits? Or from experience in museums before?
Am I unmuted? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I haven't done Google Hangouts before. One of the goals that I had in my most recent exhibit was to relate to students and to get them excited about certain topics. So my recent exhibit was actually about NBC show's The Good Place. If anyone's familiar with it, it highlights aspects of philosophy. And so I pulled books from our philosophy collection and put those in context with some of the scenes from the show, and it's gotten really great feedback. And now I think I have some students who are interested in philosophy, and they weren't really before. So that has been a really successful outreach exhibit for us.
I'm smiling and nodding because we did a small book display on The Good Place recently, and it was fairly popular too. That's wonderful. I'll add what Melissa's saying. She says, we don't have any written goals, mainly to let the students know what we have in the collection, and mainly the displays are about monthly celebrations. Great. Any other comments, or shall I move to the next question?
I guess I would say it's sometimes, on occasion, the goal has been to fill the cases, which I know we've wanted to move away from, but has been an issue at times.
Do you have multiple cases in your buildings?
Yes. Yeah. So on both floors of the library. So yeah. Particularly early on when we'd first gotten them, there was kind of, you know, a franticness to figuring out what to do with them and everything. We've gotten a little better at it, but still sometimes, you know, it can feel like that is one of the goals in a way.
I have to chime in that yes, like the practicality of like not having empty cases, because we have a couple on our walk-in and they were empty for like a month, and then we're just like finally we're like, all right, quick, we're gonna get together a bunch of books about potatoes from cooking to like planting, because I'm on the egg side. So it's like, okay, quick, we need to do this. Doesn't tie into necessarily to everything, but just go.
Ditto. Ours are currently empty, I'm sorry to say.
All right, so, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say similarly, my exhibit has been up for a very, very long time now, since August, I think, or September, just because they don't have anything to put in its place. So I'm not really sure how long it's going to sit there, but it needs to be freshened up.
Well, not having an empty case and freshening it up is a good goal. I guess it's a good baseline goal. So related to that, how are you planning or scheduling your exhibits or displays? Do you plan them out for the year, or is it ad hoc, or is it something in between those two?
In our case, when I had the exhibit cases built, my goal was to plan exhibits for the year. But because we're small and it's just me and 1.5 other librarians, there's often just not time because they are very time consuming to put together. So it's kind of been ad hoc. For a while there, we were relying on course participation, which was good. As long as that was going, we haven't had any course participation in a couple of years now. But you know, right now I'm trying to pull together something very quickly, even though the month is half over for Women's History Month.
I'll add Melissa's comment. She says they have 3 cases and sometimes it's difficult to get interest in creating a display. Mostly technical services and a couple of librarians work on displays. So how else have people sat down to calendar or schedule their displays? Melissa says they plan them a month ahead of time, reserve cases, and add the subject, but she's working on May now. Yippee. So not as close as working on March in March, but pretty close. We plan, in my library, we plan our book displays during the summer because it's a little slower and we have time to do that planning and reach out to people who might want to work on it with us. We open the call for book displays to everybody in the libraries, including student employees and staff and faculty. And then we also open it up to select other groups that we know on campus, like Office of Disability Services or other offices that we work with a lot. But we try to plan that out in the summer so that we can just kind of go in the year and get the displays put up. We do have a couple of exhibit cases, which are not just for books. Those take a lot longer. The special collections are usually involved in those. And we'll have like an exhibit up for like over a year. And it might take several months to get the content ready for the long-term exhibit. So that's how we schedule ours.
This is Kristen Mastel. I'll just chime in. So like what folks said yesterday, because I was the facilitator, a lot of us are Google campuses. So we have a Google calendar, but we just use it internally to like schedule out the different exhibit cases and book displays that we have in my part of the libraries. And then we have like a running Google sheet that just has ideas. And then we have one case that we've designated for student workers. And so like after that first 3-4 week of training and semester kind of crunch, then we kind of let student workers come up with a topic and design something. And they've really enjoyed that and kind of come up with some pretty creative things. I mean, it's pretty bite-sized, you know, can fit like 5 to 10 books in it, but they really kind of like that creativity. So that's been something good. But a suggestion yesterday that I didn't even think about was to make the calendar public so other people can see what's coming down the pipeline. So that was a takeaway I had from yesterday.
That's great. I've heard that suggestion from faculty on campus here when they heard we had done a Black Lives Matter themed book display a couple years ago. Then we talked about it at an on-campus conference, and several faculty said, we wish we had known you were doing that so we could assign going to it for our class, which was related. But we hadn't communicated that ahead of time. And although we communicated like via social media and via the fact that it's in the lobby, they didn't hear about it while it was up, the specific faculty. So now we have a list of what's coming up, and we're trying to figure out how to work with the liaison librarians to get that out to relevant faculty. So Megan or Melissa sorry, Melissa, you're over on the chat. Megan or LaMonica or Derek, when have you tended to schedule or work on the scheduling for your exhibits?
Well, at my university, we're really fortunate to have an exhibits coordinator. And so she's in charge of keeping all of our different documents and calendars up to date. So that's not even something I have to worry about. But we have various different spaces spread across our library system. And the smaller spaces, like the one that is downstairs in my building, you could just plan a couple months ahead and schedule it a couple months ahead. And then we have a much larger space that requires a lot more planning. So you have to try to schedule that like up to a year in advance sometimes. And there's always like a very big wait because it's a very popular space for everyone to use. So that's one complication that I suppose we have with our scheduling is there's a lot of competition for certain spaces. Not so much for the one downstairs that I already mentioned that, you know, my exhibit there has been up for a while. There doesn't seem to be a lot of competition for that space. But for our large space, there can be kind of a waiting list sometimes in the scheduling.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, it's LaMonica. We have, I guess, a department here that does a lot of the historical exhibits, which is our special collections department. And they do really good historical exhibits. But we also have spaces within the library, the regular part of the library, that have spaces that we probably haven't utilized as much as we can in terms of exhibit spaces and displays that could possibly advertise our resources to let people know what we have. I guess how this kind of got started is I was talking to, I guess, someone that is in charge of collections here also. And we really have, I guess, a good young adult population in terms of the books, and we have a really good juvenile section also. So we're kind of just looking at ways that we can advertise, at least start with those resources and then build our way up. But I do like the idea of having students work with it. I think that's an excellent idea. And I definitely will bring that back to them.
Great. Melissa adds that if they're creating something in coordination with a school event, they'll add a blurb in the daily newsletter. That sounds like a great promotion tactic. Thanks, Melissa. So I would love to hear how you pull together your content for your displays and exhibits, including working with students. I'd love to hear more about how those of you who have worked with student employees or even the students not employed by the library, how you're doing that. Are you working on your own? Are you working with people in your organization? Has it been a course assignment? What are the various ways you've pulled together the content?
I'll go ahead and start. If it's an exhibit that we're just doing just to have it, I usually pull together that content with some help from my library staff. There was a period of time where some of the library staff were interested in doing exhibits on their own. So for example, one librarian did a whole exhibit on Route 66, which was really good. Another one on one of the local attractions that we have here. For the student curated exhibits, that's been really a wonderful thing, and I will share an article that I co-authored with my collaborator with everybody, if you don't mind me emailing it to everybody later. And that's been an interesting process. The first time we tried it, we had a huge lesson to learn. We didn't realize that none of these students had never even seen a museum exhibit to understand, signage and presentation and this kind of thing. So that was a hard lesson to learn at the first time. After that, we came up with guidelines and had a whole session before they were even to start, explaining what they should or should not do. And this was tied to the Greek mythology course, and that's gone through several incarnations over the period of time that we did it. Sometimes it was groups choosing a particular deity to do an exhibit on. One year, the whole class divided up chapters of the Odyssey, and did an exhibit of the whole journey in the Odyssey. And those were very successful because we were able to monitor better what they were pulling together visually, the signage, the artifacts that were included. One of the things that we required was that they had to have at least one book in their display, open to a page of either artwork or some kind of important information. So that's been a very successful thing, and that has been very popular. I haven't had any instructors who have been willing to do it again since we've done that, and I lost my collaborator to another university recently. So anyway, it is something that I always have in the back of my mind, is to get students involved, make it a learning experience for them. They get research skills, they get skill in presenting, because what we would do during the opening of the exhibit is have a big event in the library with, when we did the Greek mythology, we would bring Greek food and invite the community and the students, stood with their exhibits and then explained everything, answered questions. And so it was a really wonderful activity. And I'll be quiet for a while.
Thanks for sharing that. I love that. I love that story, Dennis. And you can share the article by sending an email to the email account that sent you this link. And we'll get it out to the group. Thank you. How else have people worked to pull together the content or do the research for their displays? On their own, with groups, with colleagues?
I have a question about the student curated exhibits. It sounds like several people have done it. I took one shot at that for one exhibit, and I was just wondering, how much time do people generally spend with students before the actual construction phase of it? Just, how much do you talk to them about design principles and, captions and labels and all of that, basically? Because, yeah, the one time we tried it, it was kind of exhausting. So I'm just wondering how, what other people are doing as far as that goes.
It is very time intensive and labor intensive. We would spend, like I said, we spent one class period with them about the standards. They would then come to the library on a different class during a different class period to go shopping, so to speak, from the different supplies and fabrics and artifacts that we had on hand. The classroom instructor was primarily responsible for making sure that the content of the placards was correct and well stated and so forth and so on. So it was probably more time for her than it was for me. It was particularly intensive for me on the days of installation. And with some students, depending on their schedules, they would have to come, several times. That there was a deadline that they had to be finished. So we have found that it is a very intensive process, but educationally, it's so worth it.
We've worked with students in clubs. So we have this glass square-shaped case that you can put things other than books. You can have all sorts of creative displays, and we open it up to clubs on campus. That doesn't take much of our time because we give them a few basic supplies, like a nice piece of shiny fabric for a backdrop if they want it, and they bring in everything else, whether they're images or 3D objects or books. So we just need to let them into the small case, which is locked most of the time. When we've opened it up to student employees, we haven't had a lot of participation from student employees in our book displays or our exhibit case, but we do work with student employees on the design of signs to go with the book displays, which also are the social media images we use to promote the book displays. So I hope to actually involve student employees from the libraries in selecting books for displays going forward. I've been offering it to them for about a year. We'll see if maybe this summer they'll be involved. Any other people want to chime in about how they work with others or if they pull it together on their own?
I guess to answer the question more directly, in my institution, I pulled together a sort of working group with a lot of people from public services. It's really, like open to everybody, but that's who showed up essentially. But we convene at the beginning of every fiscal year and plan as much as we can what the exhibits are going to be. And changes will happen throughout the year, of course, but we at least try to set out a blueprint. And frequently, we'll divide up exhibits among each other, but there will usually be sort of a final phase where people are jumping in and out and helping each other with various ones. I usually take point on the special collections ones, and then they work on various other ones.
So one of the things that we're doing in our institution, we have a grant, and it is a local history kind of grant, where we are interviewing and meeting, I guess, with members of the community. And part of the grant is that we actually have an exhibit. And so we're actually working with the community to collect photographs, and to collect stories, and then I guess make an exhibit out of that. So that's one of the things that we're doing. And then I guess I've only been here since July, but I know one of the things that we're also talking about is maybe having, I guess, student artwork as an exhibit also. So not necessarily it's library related, but we are exhibiting, I guess, artwork from students and possibly faculty also.
Yeah, I'm not the person that coordinates this. Our art and architecture librarian obviously would, but I know the seniors, as a part of like their senior project, they are, I believe, required to exhibit a piece of art, and then our Wilson Library is kind of the designated spot. So all kind of throughout the library, there'll be pieces hung or on pedestals or visually, on multimedia boards or whatever. Different things going on. So I know that's been a great collaboration, and it's something we all kind of look forward to, and they host like an opening reception and all sorts of stuff. So if you're looking for an idea that's to gain support of, student art or faculty art, that's just one example.
Awesome.
We often have faculty displays as well. Our ceramics faculty member is really, really good, and she's done exhibits of her work. She always does an exhibit in the spring of her student works during the year. So that's airtime for them, exposure for them. Those are always nice because I don't have to do anything. I just supply the space and she takes care of it.
This is a great transition to talking about which partners we've worked with on exhibits or displays outside the library. I love hearing about the art from the students and the faculty. I'd love to try that here because we haven't done that here other than photos from the International Week celebration, which is part of the study abroad office. And so we hang the winning photos from this International Week photo contest for a year in our library. But that's the only art or community produced art, I should say, that we have in our library. I'd love to think about doing more of that. So what other partners have you worked with in your displays? I've heard faculty, I've heard students, any other kinds of groups or offices or partners that you've worked with? Oh, I'm sorry, I see there's a comment from Melissa too. This is totally on the same theme. She says, we've worked with departments and faculty. Examples are interior design, a set of miniature chairs, and the students like to see what their peers are doing. And then for Native American Heritage Month, she asked all faculty to contribute because we had many courses on the subject. The ceramic class created pots as they were originally made, and others contributed items they owned, such as weavings. A student saw the exhibit and brought items from home, such as baby shoes he made for his son, and it was informative and fun. And the Native American student wore his regalia to the exhibit, and people learned a lot. That's great. Thanks, Melissa. Other partners might give people ideas of who else they could reach out to.
We've had community groups request space for exhibits and events, and one of them was, interestingly, the icon writing group at one of the churches in town. They wanted space to exhibit the icons that they write, and so in that case, and in any case where there's the potential for objection, we always put a disclaimer up. This is not the beliefs or of the university or anybody associated with the university, so we're in the clear there. Anyway, it was very, very successful. The exhibit cases were full, the walls were full. They had an event in the library where they had the priest at that church come and talk about icons. It was a full house, and to complement it, I did some in some of our other smaller exhibit spaces. I did an exhibit of the history of it, showing the process of making the paints and this and that. So it was a complement to what they were already doing.
Any other partners? Last call for partners. I've mostly worked with student affairs offices, like I mentioned, disability, Office of Disability Services, Center for Global Engagement, which is our study abroad. The Recreation Center has done an exhibit in our glass case, student clubs, which are part of student affairs. So those have been my main partners on campus, besides faculty and well, I already said student clubs, besides faculty. But we actually don't do a ton with faculty. We try, but yeah, we try. And Melissa says, so this morning she downloaded a list of student organizations and wants to suggest that they create displays. And right now they have a display on the history of the nuns who created Incarnate Word, and they created it from their archives. Cool.
I think at my university, we've worked sometimes with faculty. We usually collaborate a lot as librarians, so the main core of the team is librarian oriented, but every once in a while we'll integrate some faculty if appropriate. And then the museum studies students will sometimes help out, but I don't think we've really reached out much to undergraduate students. So that's something we might be doing in the future now that I've heard from you all. So thank you.
Yeah, same here. Reaching out to the undergraduate art programs is now on my list. I want to see if they want to exhibit their work. All right. Go ahead.
We've gotten a few exhibits put together with the help of social clubs, and in particular the alumni part of it, where particularly ahead of homecoming. So people bring in some of their memorabilia from then, and that's actually even helped with our advancement efforts at times. So.
That's a great idea too, and Melissa adds that the museum students is a good suggestion. Yeah. All right, so okay, sorry, back up. Another question we had thought of discussing were, did you have any standards or guidelines or policies that you have in place for exhibits and displays?
I mentioned before that we do force the students. We can make suggestions to other people, if they're coming in from the outside, but I usually just sort of assist them with that. But for students, we definitely have written guidelines, and I'm happy to share those with people if they like. Actually, those are listed in the article that I'm going to send you as an appendix.
We probably should, but we don't. At least not for like, you know, the small little exhibit cases that are in like our individual libraries. I imagine for like our big special collection archive, you know, the one like you mentioned before, like it's up for like a year. Ours are up for like 6 months or so. I'm sure there are some guidelines for that one because it's in such high demand and such a big space. But we don't, at least for the smaller ones that I'm aware of. There could be, I'm just maybe not aware of it.
Similarly, Melissa says, gosh, no. We have one policy on selecting displays and exhibits, selecting the content, and it kind of builds off ALA, intellectual freedom, and those kinds of professional statements. But it's pretty short, and it's only about the content and who's invited to do it. We don't have written like procedures or standards. We're thinking about standards for font sizes pretty soon, and font choices, but we just started talking about that, and that relates to accessibility, which I also want to talk about. So that's our we have one policy, but it's short.
That leads to a question I had, because we're exploring the same thing, making some sort of like a style guide to kind of like standardize the look of exhibits across the library. I was wondering if anybody else does that or has thought about doing that or anything.
Great question, Derek. Anyone?
As far as a style guide, we don't have anything like that per se. If it's an exhibit that I'm putting together, I just stylistically, you know, do it automatically. I can't think of any other than the student exhibits and giving them what we expect. Any other thing that we try to do along that line.
We don't have a style guide, but like I said, we're thinking about font sizes and font choices for instance, dyslexic readers or just general visual accessibility. And we were introduced to that concept by the Office of Disability Services, who does a book display with us every year. And they have helped us with color choice so that it's high enough contrast for all sorts of visual impairments, including color blindness. And so they've given us a lot of feedback on basically high contrast and simple fonts. And so we're thinking a little bit about that now. But in terms of stylistic, we don't have a real guide. Yeah, and anyone else?
So I've got a question. So for the people that do exhibits and displays, when you're talking about like the style guide and then making the exhibit accessible, in addition to that, do you have like a format where you have an introduction to the exhibit or display, or any captions related to each of the items that you have on there? Or do you just kind of lay them out? I'm trying to figure out how we might want to do ours too. That will make it inviting to people and people will look, as opposed to people just walking and just looking at it and going on their merry way. So does anyone have any suggestions about that?
Yes, captions are always useful. You don't want to over caption. If it's something that it's obvious why it's there, there's no need to do that. I can actually send photographs if people would like of, you know, things that have been done. And we do have introductory information either in the display itself or on the side of it, depending on what it is. For example, a Nutcracker exhibit that I did in November through December, I did an explanation about the title of it was Nutcrackers in Tradition and in Pop Culture. So the pop culture part of it, I had a big explanation posted with the area where that part of the display was.
Melissa says she's interested in seeing your display. I am too. You can send your photos to that same email account.
I will definitely do that.
Thank you.
It might be neat if several people have images. Maybe we could see what, you know, if everyone has an example or if some of us have an example of one to compare and see what different people are doing.
Sure.
I would love that.
Yeah. You can hit reply all on that email from this morning, or you can send it all to the uls.aoc Gmail and we can compile it, whichever you prefer. That's great. I'll send a few photos too. LaMonica, to answer your question, for us, the exhibit cases, which are the glass enclosed cases, it just varies exhibit to exhibit, whether we have explanations or not, captions for each item or not. It just depends on the content, but we always have a big sign attached to it or next to it or underneath it. Yeah. And then for our book displays, we don't, we write up a little abstract as to what the purpose of why these books were selected, but that abstract isn't always available on the display itself. Sometimes we just put it on the website or on our LibGuide, which is showing all the books in the display as well. But sometimes if it's not clear from the title of the book display and the books you're looking at, like how are these all connected, we will put the abstract or the explanation just in a Lucite sign holder, as like put it on the bookshelf. That's how we do that. And Megan says she has to go. Okay, sorry, Megan. They're having a fire alarm. Oh my goodness. Thanks for joining us, Megan. You'll get an email follow-up.
Be safe. I'm sure it's probably not real, but
Wow. All right, so we have 4 more questions, but I want to cover what is most interesting to you in the last 7-ish minutes. So the questions I had left were about accessibility. How are you thinking about accessibility, or how are you promoting your exhibits and displays? Do you create events or interactive components with them, or how are you assessing the displays? So we could pick as a group and talk about one of those or 2 of those, or we could just talk about whichever interests us or whichever we have questions about for others in the group. I'm fine with either approach. Does anyone have an opinion about which one they want to talk about the most? I'm leaning towards how do you promote your exhibits and displays? Anyone else?
We try to promote as much as possible, and a lot will depend on the time factor. If it's something that was pulled together quickly, then there's often not time to promote it other than sending an announcement to campus email lists, Facebook, that kind of thing. We have had occasions where posters were created and hung around town. There was one exhibit where we actually pulled together and had printed postcards that were sent out. And that was an exhibit for actually my uncle. He's a black and white photographer and very much in the style of Ansel Adams. So he was doing an exhibit of his work in the library. I pulled together, information about Ansel Adams and that school of thought to put in the cases to complement the exhibit. But we really tried to get it advertised statewide, region-wide, to get an audience for him during the opening.
Thanks, Dennis. I'll add that Melissa says, wow, displays are assessed. What an idea. Maybe we should go there. I can start with my initial thoughts about assessment lately. I've been wanting to think about assessing, or at least assessing/evaluating our displays and exhibits. And I recently came across an article. I'll send it to you all. And one of the things they did is an internal survey, which obviously isn't your target audience for your displays and exhibits, but it was asking about people in the library, their satisfaction with the process of engaging with, becoming involved with creating displays, and also their satisfaction with the content. And that article also said they're thinking about trying to do that with a campus-wide survey, which I think would be interesting. And then they also said in that article that they had a guest book, and that a lot of their comments about written into the guest book have been helpful, both for thinking of topics and other displays, and also getting feedback on the displays that are up. So any other thoughts on promoting their displays or assessing?
There are some good ideas from yesterday, but one that we do frequently is we'll like pose a question kind of related to the exhibit, not necessarily like you have to read everything to be able to answer it, but just something along that theme, and then like provide Post-its on the wall, and so people can kind of like add to this conversation that's going on. Or we've done like, we have a rolling whiteboard and we'll put it by there and like have a little tally or something. So those are a few things that we've done. Again, that's more like, well, could be qualitative or quantitative, depending if you're counting or if you're looking and coding things. But yeah, just quick and easy way. Or if it's tied to events, of course, then counting people and surveying them.
Kristen, I love that because it combines being interactive with promoting it, because it's like eye-catching, and then also assessing because you can see how much interactivity the whiteboard or the pinned up pieces of paper got. That's really cool.
The instructor that I had been collaborating with on the Greek mythology exhibit, she did an assessment rubric for that project, connected to the class. So that one was assessed, for the purposes of the class, which we all have to do anyway. In terms of other exhibits, we have a guest book. We try to jot down comments that we hear people make. Sometimes people will write their own comments in the guest book. But I hadn't really thought about assessing exhibits until just recently, since assessment is the big buzzword right now.
Dennis, same here. I only recently started thinking about it. And I should say another thing we do for our book displays is we look at how many checkouts each display gets. We keep track of that. And I will say that annually our most popular book display is called Blind Date with a Book, where we wrap the books up and put a label on the front with a description from the person who selected it. A funny description or a short description or an intriguing description. And then we have the barcode. We figure out the barcode situation, put the barcode on the wrapped book so that a student or a person is checking it out without knowing what book it is. And they walk away with it still wrapped. That's always our most popular display. It checks out way more books than any other display. We do that around Valentine's Day.
I like that idea a lot. That's really cool.
All right, well, I want to respect your time, especially if you're going to something else at the top of the hour, wherever the hour is for you. Any last comments or questions for this group?
I'd just like to add that exhibits are also a good way to get by with, holiday decorating, because if you decorate for the holidays through an exhibit and give historical information about it, make it really an informative thing rather than you're choosing one holiday over some other holiday, but you give representation to different holidays, over the years. So I did Nutcrackers this year. I could do something related to Hanukkah next year, and always using the disclaimer. Then you're probably in good shape without offending anybody.
That's a great point, and I hadn't thought of that before, so thank you. Any other questions or comments on this topic? Okay. I'm trying to do like the teacher wait, wait long enough.
No, good ideas, and I can't wait to see people's examples. So if we all send examples, we can hopefully steal and borrow from one another, which would be kind of fun. And help us, for those of us that have blank display cases and or are struggling with an idea. It might jog one for all of us for the next go around.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be fun to see examples. So feel free to send a photo or a link or an article that you've read or written. That would be wonderful. So thank you so much for participating today. This is a great way to get ideas from each other, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope that you got a few useful or new ideas. You'll get an email later today with a survey asking for feedback, and we hope that you can complete that survey in about a week so that we can improve this experience. And I do see another comment from Melissa. She says, does anyone know of a great book or article on displays or exhibits? Seems most are aimed toward displays for youngsters. Do we send the hood? So I have a couple of articles I've read recently. I'll send those, and other people can send theirs too. And then you can send your examples, photos, or links to uls.aoc@gmail.com, and we'll compile it and send it back to the group. And if you wanted more ideas, there was a roundtable yesterday, which is archived on the YouTube channel, and there will be a roundtable tomorrow, and I believe one next week as well, all on the same topic. So you can find them on I'll include a link to the YouTube channel in the email with the survey. So thanks again, and with that, have a great day.
Thank you for pulling this together. I'm so, exhibits are something that's in my blood, and always have been. So it's nice to see that other people are doing it and interested in it, and I don't think it gets enough airtime. So thank you.
You're welcome. It was a committee effort, but yeah, you're welcome. It was fun to talk with you all. Good luck with all of your exhibit planning. And Melissa says, thanks to everyone, great ideas. Bye.